Yeah. She's not coming. She's traveling.
No Heidi.
No Heidi and no Barbara.
Okay, I knew it was my curriculum that
Please here, okay. We'll call this meeting to order at 7:08 p.m. on Tuesday, November 20th. This is our business meeting. We'll start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
So this is our annual organization meeting. So the agenda is going to be a little different. Typically, we just have, if there was an election, we swear in the new officers, and then, or swear in the new members, and then we have an election for officers, and that is our meeting. Tonight, this will be a little different because we had a number of matters we wanted to address tonight. So the order of things is a little unusual. The next order of business will be the nomination and election of officers for the Board of Education. We will follow that with public comments, superintendent's report, actions, information, and reports, just like a regular business meeting, and the approval of minutes and adjournment. So we have a good amount of work to do tonight. We will start with the nomination of officers. The first position to be nominated for will be chairman. Any nominations for chair? Mr. Lyons.
Mr. Chairman, I would like to nominate for chairman the person who's now chairman, Mike Barbas. I was thinking of something to say here. There was a word that came to my mind thinking of Mike, which is tireless. He devotes an extraordinary number of hours to this unpaid position, still manages to traipse around the planet and run a business at the same time that he gets all of these things done. He's continued to lead a bipartisan Board of Ed that has been working very closely with the superintendent and has made tremendous progress in getting our strategic operating plan implemented, and has done that through budget crises and everything else, and has still managed to keep us on track. And he deserves also credit for having a tremendous impact on our facilities plan and keeping that moving in the face of a lot of difficulties. So I'm very happy to place the name of Mike Barbas in nomination for re-election as chairman.
Mike, thank you very much. Are there any other nominations?
Well, you don't have to second this. Or do you?
Second is required, yes.
Oh,
Okay, thank you, Dr. Kimmel.
No, I'll second the nomination, and I want to stress, I think it's very important that we continue the bipartisan tradition when we continue to nominate and approve other board members for these positions. We're one of the few, I guess, elected bodies around that makes a point of preserving a bipartisan, not just the name only, the way we work with each other. I think, you know, if we didn't know better, it'd be hard to figure out who was a Republican and who was a Democrat, and that's the best way to go.
Thank you very much, Bruce. Any other nominations? If there are no further nominations, I guess I call a vote, or yes? Okay. Yeah. All in favor? All in favor? I guess I'll vote for myself. That's unanimous. Thank you very much. Right. And now we will move on to the position of vice chair. Any nominations? Eric, Mr. Anderson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and congratulations on your reelection. I would like to bring into nomination the name of Sarah Lemieux. Sarah is somebody who joined the board a year ago, and in that time, I've watched and had the privilege of working with someone who maintains her heart and dedication to being a parent, who has been shown an amazing measure of grounded research and wanting to make sure that all answers are there. She has a kind heart, but also a sound mind. And the grounded nature of Sarah is something that is quite amazing, given the fact that I worked with her at The Haunting of Mill Hill and watched the woman traipse around with scissors in her head, singing Swedish songs. It has been an honor and a privilege to serve with her on the Special Education Ad Hoc Committee, and I thank her very much for taking over as lead in my absence. And the work that you've accomplished there has been amazing. I look forward to seeing what you will bring to this executive committee. It's been a pleasure to serve in this capacity for the past year, and I know you will do this position very proud, and this board very proud. So with that, I would like to nominate you, Sarah Lemieux.
Thank you very much. Mr. Meek.
I would just like to second Sarah for the position of vice chair, and at the same time echo Mr. Anderson's statements, and also thank Mr. Anderson for his service as our vice chair for the last year. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other nominations? No, if there are no further nominations, all in favor? All in favor, unanimous. Thank you very much. And now our third and last position, officer position on the Board of Education for secretary. Could I have any nominations? I will actually make the nomination for Brian Meek. Brian has been our secretary, has been the chair of our finance committee. He has been an integral part of the bipartisanship that Dr. Kimmel was discussing earlier. And Brian has multitasked, not only running his own business, his life, 3 kids. He's, I think, got the most kids. Oh, no, Sarah's got 3 kids as well as twins. I do not have twins. It sounds like you need to have twins to be on the executive committee. But anyway, Brian's got his hands full, but yet is at every meeting and chairs our finance committee. As a member of our facilities committee, and has been very helpful as we proceed through that very big plan of ours. And I'm very happy he is part of our team, and I'm very pleased and honored to be nominating him for this position.
Thanks, Mike.
Eric, Mr. Anderson.
I'd like to second the nomination, Mr. Burvis.
Okay.
And just a quick comment, I was the individual who nominated Mr. Meek last year, and it still astounds me that I am able to have any semblance of a working relationship with an individual like Mr. Meek, given our continuing divisive political times. But all silliness aside, we may not agree on every topic, but I do value his commitment to this district and his perseverance to make sure that Norwalk Public Schools succeed. So with that, I happily second the nomination of Brian Meek.
Thanks, Eric.
And
I'd like to speak to the nomination.
yes, please, Dr. Kimmel.
This is such an important point at the risk of sounding redundant. What Eric said is absolutely true. Probably Brian and I couldn't be further apart in the political spectrum, okay? Yet when it comes to local politics, the politics of the Board of Ed, it's very difficult to find where we disagree.
Yeah.
That's a fascinating part about local politics. And for what it's worth, if you're interested in politics, start at the bottom, man. Start at the local level, because that's where you get results. You have a direct impact on people, and Republicans get to know us Democrats. We're not that crazy. So, and I'm sure possibly vice versa. So it's actually a pleasure for me, because as Mike L. knows, generally the folks in this chamber, there's one team is over there and the other team is over there, and they're strategizing this, that, and the other thing, and we don't have that. And this is the best way to operate. So I'm really pleased that we have a bipartisan board, but really in a sense a nonpartisan board.
Thanks, Bruce.
Great. Thank you very much. Any other nominations? If there are no further nominations, we'll have a vote. All in favor? That's unanimous. Thank you very much. That concludes our election of officers. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Unfortunately, the press is not here tonight. I'm not sure why, but they're not. So this moment, I guess, is getting picked up on film and broadcast live. But obviously, I think a lot of what we said here is very important, that we really are a unique entity. And in a time of some very divisive political environment, you can see people here from all walks of life all working together. And as you can see, there's a definite bond and respect and camaraderie amongst us, despite, as I said, coming from all sorts of different angles. We have one goal in mind, and that is to have the best school system we can. Obviously, best is people have different definitions of that. But we do have this one goal, and we are working hard at it on a daily basis. Yes, Ms. Nunez.
On a different topic, I'm not sure if the live stream is going. Is it going? Yeah. Oh, it is?
Oh.
Okay.
Oh,
Were you trying to find it, Sarah, and you couldn't?
No, I just didn't
normally
it
we
on
see
monitor.
the monitors, so we can actually.
Oh, right, yeah. Oh, there's our friend. Okay, so thank you. We will now move on to public comments. I don't know, Julie, I don't know if there's a sign-up sheet. Would you mind grabbing
I'll grab that,
that?
Mr. Barber, since I do have to
I got it.
depart.
Thank you, Eric.
I don't think my bag wants to leave.
You want me to administer?
Take it easy, Eric.
Thanks, Eric.
There you go.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Tonight's public comments begin with Andrew Didden. Please come to the podium, state your name and address for the record, and please keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Hi, my name's Andrew Didden. My address is 90 Ludlow Street. I'll be talking Stamford, Connecticut. I'm here with a few of my students. I'm in my 4th year of teaching at Ponus Ridge Middle School. It's been an absolute privilege to work with the students of Norwalk, and I walk into school every single day trying to make an impact. Over the last 2 years, I have had the pleasure of coaching the girls' basketball team. I even expected to hold tryouts for this year's team this afternoon. I passed out permission slips, announcements were made, and many of the girls spent their gym, recess, and home time practicing in hopes of earning a spot on the team. Unfortunately, yesterday morning on my way to work, I received an email that the basketball team and the traditional basketball season would no longer exist. I was immediately heartbroken at the idea of losing such a bastion of school spirit and cooperation. In my last 2 years as the coach, I have witnessed many of these young women, such as Alicia and Chloe behind me, grow as individuals, as friends, as a family. I am here representing the student athletes that have spent years practicing, the girls that have balanced an education and a rigorous season, the players that demonstrate tenacity, teamwork, and Ponus pride. My girls and I have a few questions. We are wondering why this change is happening so last minute, right before the season and right after the field hockey and football teams just finished their season. We are wondering why school teams, which promote school spirit and teach student traits such as hard work and persistence, will no longer be offered. I am wondering why these girls, the gifted and talented basketball players that they are, who have consistently persevered, are being asked to play in a club format when they have earned the right to represent their school. Why is it being taken away when we should be celebrating these girls' talents and work ethic? These types of changes should not happen mid-year. When the players have watched football players and field hockey players finish their seasons, these changes shouldn't happen the day before tryouts when the children are most excited. I understand the need for growth. I understand the need for evolution, but these alterations would be much better suited for the beginning of next year, when we've had ample time to plan and coordinate more effective programs. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Andrew. Joe Janderko.
You have something to read? I'd like to go after Chloe goes, so that they can read if they need to go home and do homework, things like that. You're okay?
Yeah, we have Chloe and someone else on the list, but not in that order.
Okay.
3 minutes, Joe. Thank you.
Good evening, Joe Janderko, 9 Mott Avenue. Normally I speak on behalf of the teachers that I represent, but today I'm actually here for my students, just like Mr. Didden. I just left Ponus where we distributed 25 Thanksgiving baskets to families in need and over 100 coats. So my commitment is always to my students and teachers first. But good evening, members of the Board of Ed. I'm here to speak about the abrupt changes to the middle school sports. With no discussion involving any of the middle school athletic directors or coaches, it appears that this program ends mid-year. Students have been planning and preparing for their tryouts and are now left out in the cold. School governance councils worked last year to make sure that their budgets ensured funding and that it would be available for this programming.
In my report, I can address
What is the purpose of empowering our parents to make budget decisions if only to ignore the process and make changes behind closed doors? Transparency is truly lacking in this decision. Our schools benefit from school culture, and with each game played, our students grow with pride. I ask tonight that the decision to cut middle school sports be tabled for this year and allow the students to compete and have their opportunity to represent their school. A meeting of all stakeholders should be held, including the coaches, school governance council members, athletes, and the ADs, to create a program that allows for greater participation and increase the opportunities for all students. Please don't rob our students of their athletic opportunity this year. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Mark Mastriani.
Hello, my name is Mark Mastriani. I'm a teacher at West Rocks. I live in Norwalk. I've lived in Norwalk my entire life. I am a taxpayer. I want to thank everybody, the board, for giving me this opportunity to speak. I felt it important to be here because I feel there's a lack of accurate information about how intramurals are run, what they consist of, and their regard insofar as importance in the school system. I think it's these misconceptions that have led to these drastic modifications and the cancellation of the sports teams. I've been an intramural coordinator at West Rock since 1998, so I've witnessed many changes in the intramural program and also a few cancellations of the program, the last being in 2012. That was fortunately reinstated in 2013. Unfortunately, my daughter was an 8th grader in 2012, so she didn't have the opportunity to participate in the intramural programs at West Rocks. Well, I'd also like to add that during all my time as coordinator, the Board of Education in downtown has never asked for any input from any of the school coordinators on how the programs are run. So I find it difficult to assess a program if you haven't gotten the information on it. So let me begin with a description of the middle school program. Each program is divided into 2 categories: sports teams and regular intramural activities. The sports teams are a travel football team for boys, the indoor field hockey team for girls in the spring session, boys and girls basketball teams in the winter session, co-ed soccer and co-ed volleyball in the spring session. Each school plays 9 games during those 3 sessions. Regular intramural activities, which are not travel teams, meet Tuesday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays from 3 to 4 for 8-week sessions. Activities include at West Rocks, 6th and 7th grade touch football, yoga, caring club, which is a community service club, crafts club, table tennis, junior achievement, young men's club, 6th and 7th grade basketball, computers, robotics, yearbook, 6th and 7th grade soccer, girls soft lacrosse, and stickball for you Bronx fans. Okay, so we do offer a wide variety of programs, and which gives the opportunity for every student to find something of interest. We also offer one-time activities such as the girls and boys badminton tournament, boys handball tournament, and the 3-on-3 basketball tournament, all intramural activities. I know cost is a factor, and again, there have been some misconceptions here as well. The cost per middle school to run all the sports teams is $23,219. For some reason, there was a total misconception on the cost per game. I had heard as high as $8,000. That's 3? Okay, well, let me just help whoever was working on that math that it's not 9 games. It's 9 games per session, but there's a boys game and a girls game, so that makes it 18 games per session for the 3 sessions, so that would be 54 games, and divide that by the 23,000, then you get the 429. Not 8,000, not 3,000, not 2,000, but $429, $39, and 200 of that is from the bus. Another 100 is for the officials, so the cost is relatively low. Again, I'm sorry I ran over my time, but I thought it was important that we really had some facts on the intramural program in Norwalk.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep.
Mark Jackson.
Good evening, Mark Jackson, 95 George Avenue, Norwalk. I was actually just informed today about the middle school intramural sports, and when you look at intramural sports, it really brings out the best in school culture. When you see the girls and the boys wearing their jerseys to school on a day of a game, it really enhances the school spirit. And when you take something away from them like that, it really takes away from the school. And having intramural sports brings out the best in everybody. And when you constantly drill kids about testing, they need that avenue to have sports, and that's something that they need. And I think that's definitely something you should bring back and put back into the budget. And like other people have already said, that's something that should be addressed later on in the year or the beginning of next school year, not mid-school year. I just wanted to say that. Thank you for your time.
Thanks, Mark. Chloe Mattis.
Hello, my name is Chloe Mattis. I live on 6 Felix Lane. I am an 8th grade student at Ponus Ridge, and I tried out for the basketball team in 6th grade, and I didn't make the team. Even though I didn't make it, I did the next best thing, and I stayed after school to cheer on the team that I knew I could make next year. I went to cheer on the girls that I looked up to. I was only a 6th grader, but I dreamed about the day I could be one of those girls, playing against the other middle schools with my friends cheering me on. I made a pact with a few of my friends that we would train harder, we would practice more, we would keep watching and learning and playing until we also made the team. Last year, when we were 7th graders, we earned our spots on the team. I remember running to my dad's car after school and telling him all about it. I was so proud, and he was so proud. I am a Ponus Ridge basketball player, and I'm confused. I've supported this team for 2 years while I've been here. Why is it being taken away from me when I finally get to be a leader? Is there anything you could do to help us?
Thank you, Chloe. That is the end of our sign-up sheet. Are there any other members of the public who wish to speak? Please step forward, state your name and address, and keep your comments to 3 minutes. Thank you.
3 minutes?
Please.
Thank you. Paul Mattis, that's my daughter Chloe, 6 Felix Lane, taxpayer for 15 years. Happily pay my taxes. Very fond of the school districts, very fond of the town. I'm not from here originally, but at the beginning kind of fell into the negative propaganda of Norwalk in itself. I couldn't be a larger advocate of the community to date. With that, I've been heavily active in youth sports, in large part of my background and the impact that it had on me. So, not short of probably 1,000 hours with some people that are in the audience today, and the impact that it has on children. Now, it's debatable in terms of being inclusive versus exclusive. That's another conversation, but again, like most of us, woke up Monday morning and was told that the basketball team and all sports thereafter will be canceled effective immediately. Seems to be a bit aggressive, drastic, and slightly irresponsible, considering the teachers and the coaches have prepped these kids, in some cases, in my daughter's case, 2 years. And my daughter's a great example of, she not only got cut once, she got cut twice. It's a fork in the road, right? You choose to take a left turn and do something else and be active and support the school, or you just continue to work hard and try out again. In my humble opinion, everything in this world is becoming more competitive. We're raising our youth in these plastic bubbles, and it's hard for me to believe that anybody here that has put on a uniform that has some symbolic value of a university, of a middle school or high school, that collectively that this could come to this decision, right? I have difficulty getting my daughter to put on a pair of sweatpants to go to school or a pair of jeans. She proudly, along with her friends, her teammates, puts on the Ponus Middle School uniform. Now she's being asked that it will no longer exist. Now again, I don't necessarily have a problem with a different concept with youth sports. Youth sports today is big, big money. Yep. And quite frankly, I think one of the purest things about youth sports is actually playing at no cost, besides new shoes, new uniforms, for a school, a public school. So I urge you to reconsider. And if you haven't had a uniform on with a high school or a middle school name on it, I need you to find somebody who has and ask them what kind of impact it has on them. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Paul.
Thank you, Mr. Meek. We will now go to the superintendent's report. I think those of you who've been here to discuss middle school sports will want to hear that the superintendent will address this in his report. I will just tell you that when we had to approve the 18-19 budget, which was not an easy thing to do, we did modify the amount of money that was being spent on middle school sports. And so this is not a decision that was made on Monday. This decision was made last year, and the implementation at some level was not implemented properly. I'll let the superintendent go on about it some more. Secondly, we were looking at making partnerships with people and having greater student participation than we have had historically in this program. In addition, on the budgeting, our CFO is not here tonight, but we went at length through the numbers and what, oh, Tom, you are here, okay. On bus, sorry, I was looking there and I didn't see you, on bus transportation costs. And the bulk of the money we were spending in middle school sports was on bus transportation. And we felt that this, you know, when we were looking at a budget where we had to cut millions of dollars, this was a place where we didn't have a choice. So we'll now turn to the superintendent's report.
Okay, so I guess this will be in addition to my report, but I just want to refresh the board's memory on the decisions that were made last June. This was actually the very last decision that you made in the budget reconciliation process, and it was the end of the year. Basically, the decision was to cut the $120,000 that was budgeted to $80,000. And the $80,000 enabled each of the 4 schools to have $20,000 for after-school activities, or $10,000 per semester. And if one would look at an activity at a cost point of around $2,000, there could be 5 activities per semester. These activities were to be worked on by the principal and the school governance council. Very similar, identical to the process that has existed at the elementary level since the inception of your SGC policy. We've encouraged the schools, among those 5 activities per semester, to have at least 2 sports or 2 athletic activities, have at least 1 arts activity, and then 2 other activities. In terms of sports, what I think the board was reacting to was the competitive sports that where a large number of students were cut from the team. And that's not consistent with middle school best practice, and the expense of the transportation going back and forth. So what we are encouraging is intramural sports. We want middle school sports not to be a gifted program for those that are already athletic, but rather a program in which students can explore something that they may not have done before and can build skills, particularly gross motor skills in that particular sport. So, you know, that's the, we've enlisted a couple of partners for this. One is the Norwalk Junior Soccer Association that has agreed to organize the soccer teams in the spring. Those teams, by the way, will not cut students. Any student who wants to play will play, and they'll play at a level that's appropriate for them on an intramural basis or across town. The Silver Mine Arts Center has also come on as a partner. They are providing arts activities after school in several of our elementary schools currently, and they are available to do that in our middle schools as well. I mentioned that this decision came very late in June. We did discuss it at a principals meeting at the end of June, third Thursday of June. However, you know, it was done in the rush of the close of school, and Kristen Karsmitz, our budget director, brought to my attention recently that she didn't think that some of the schools were following this correctly based upon the expenses that they were making. And so I pulled in the 4 middle school principals. We went over this in detail in terms of the amount of money available, the 5 activities, the SGC involvement, the emphasis on intramurals that would focus on participation and skill development as opposed to previous athleticism. And so we have a couple of schools that are making adjustments. Not all of the schools, but a couple needed to make adjustments. And I think that's what you see the speakers reacting to tonight. But we are trying to follow in detail the decision that you made last spring. And again, I think that when we look at the purpose of after-school activities at the middle school level, it is participation, it is inclusion, it is skill development, and it's really not the farm team for the high school sports. We want to, you know, at the middle school level, we want students to explore and see what they like, see what they're good at, and but to be included in those things that they would like to do. So. And I apologize for some of the communication lapse that may have occurred at the school level on this, but again, I think it's better to try to do it the right way now than to let it go an entire year.
May I ask a question? Any decision that was made then to continue or discontinue a program was at the school level, and it was constrained by their budget. And so if a program was canceled, it was because they either did not have the money or they opted for other programs. Would that be a correct conclusion?
Well, that, but also, you know, if it was a competitive sports program. You remember the previous iteration of this, you spent all the money on competitive sports programs. And there were not a lot of, you know, the number of students served was relatively small in that scenario, and again, a lot of money on transportation. So it could be for that reason. Or it could be for the fact that half the money exists. And we're basically limited to 5 after-school activities, 2 sports, 1 arts, 2 others. But again, I think that the way we see this developing, we are going to have far more children served and participating in this model than we did in the previous one. But certainly there is room for sports activities in this model. Okay, I'm going to continue with my report. I have a somewhat lengthy report tonight, but we have a number of important items that are time sensitive. I'd like to ask Tom Hamilton and Lisa Lensko if they would come up. There is a requirement of an annual wellness report. We wanted to do that before the year ended. And as you know, last year we organized our wellness committee for the first time, and that was, you know, consistent with work that we were doing to improve the nutritional value of our food and the environment of our cafeterias and dining areas. And so, under Lisa and Tom's direction, the wellness committee has made great strides, and we're looking forward to their report this evening.
Okay, I'm going to just start out, again, reiterate what the superintendent just indicated, which is that this is a requirement of the wellness policy itself. Does make reference to an annual report, so the report tonight we have provided at your stations as well as to the public a written report and then a summary of it that we'll sort of walk through here tonight. Lisa Lenskold is the chair of our district wellness committee and is also a member of the food service lead team, and she has been an instrumental player in terms of bringing this district wellness policy together and implementing various aspects of it over the last year. So I'm going to turn it over to Lisa, and I will jump in when we talk about food.
Yep. Okay. Hi, everyone. My name is Lisa Lenskold. As Tom said, I'm the chair of the District Wellness Committee. When we wrote the policy, I just wanted to do a little bit of a recap on the policy. When we wrote the policy, it was written using CDC's framework, which is whole school, whole community, whole child model framework for addressing health in schools, and it's highly regarded as a standard. So that's what we chose to use. So the policy went from a 2-page policy to now about a 10-page policy because we chose to take a comprehensive approach. The District Wellness Committee is made up of about 30 to 40 community organizations, staff members, nurses, parents, students. Some Board of Ed members are also regular attendees as well. And we meet 4 times a year, which is a requirement. Sometimes we'll meet 5, and we meet every other month on the last Wednesday of the month, just in case anyone wants to know the time. So after the policy was approved, what we really wanted to do was focus on the implementation of the policy. We didn't want it to be just a policy that sat on a shelf. So we got a partner who funded a consultant called Center for Healthy Schools, and they helped us on developing a roadmap for implementation of the policy. So last year, Frank Costanzo helped us get a training session, and each of the school governance councils was trained on the assessment tool because we needed baseline data. We had no baseline data. So each of the schools during the school governance training, which was 2 nights in January, was trained hands-on on this Alliance for a Healthy Generation, Healthy Schools assessment tool. The consultants are actually going to be returning this January, where we'll revisit the assessments and they'll start to work on action plans. And that'll be done on a school-by-school basis. And now there are, so within the framework of the Wellness Committee, we work on initiatives so that we're actually doing things to make improvements in certain areas. And one of the areas that we've spent a lot of time on is school food, and Tom's going to remark on that.
Yeah, so you'll remember in 2016, the district hired an outside consultant, Sustainable Food Systems, that did an evaluation of the city's food service operations and identified a whole host of areas where they recommended improvements. And that report has served us really to provide a roadmap on the kinds of changes that we've been seeking to undertake over the last couple of years. So one of the first recommendations or primary recommendations from the consultant was the establishment of this food services lead team. And the notion of a lead team really is to have all the stakeholders in food service get together on a regular scheduled basis and to provide leadership and oversight and direction to the food service operation. So that lead team has been meeting every other month over the course of the last I guess, 18 months or so at this point, but through all of last year. And I think it has made a difference in terms of providing a stronger direction, a stronger focus, more leadership, and a greater push for making improvements. One of the other recommendations from the consultant was to really reorganize the administrative team, and that was also accomplished last year. As you know, our current food service management company is Whitson's. But as a result of the reorganization that was put in place at the beginning of last year, the food service director was replaced, and a new food service director was brought in place of the prior food service director. Whitson's also provided the district with the resident district manager, which is a level above food service director. So George Kirby is the current resident district manager, who is also on site here every day in Norwalk. So we have both a food service director and a resident district manager provided by Whitson's. And number 3, and also a recommendation from the consultant, was to hire a district chef. So there is a district chef position that was also created in the Whitson's table of organization that is currently filled and is intended to provide culinary leadership to the food service operation. There was the elimination of one district position, a district management position, that was also recommended by the consultant, that was eliminated, or that was implemented as well last year. In terms of some other accomplishments over the course of the last year, one of the recommendations from the consultant again was to move toward reusable serviceware and dishwashers, and we have put dishwashers and reusable serviceware in at 2 schools. Actually now with the new year, we have a dishwasher going in at a 3rd school, and reusable serviceware will be used at that school this year. The alternative breakfast program was also a recommendation from the consultant, and one that we were pursuing for a variety of reasons. One, because we knew that the district's participation in the breakfast program was very low based on the old method of providing breakfast. The district applied for and received a $52,000 grant from the ASSA, which is the Superintendent's Association, and that grant was used to buy carts and other equipment needed to roll out the breakfast program at 12 of our schools, which we accomplished last year. This is a breakfast in the classroom model as opposed to going to the cafeteria, and it's a grab-and-go cart that is generally stationed near the front door that students are coming in, and that's been proven to increase breakfast use or breakfast servings around the country, and we certainly found a very significant increase in the number of breakfasts served here in Norwalk. So breakfasts last year, the number of breakfasts we served increased by 70,000 meals last year, and that's important both from a nutritional standpoint, and it's also important from a financial standpoint, because those are reimbursable meals that help the bottom line of the food service operation as well. Going forward, we will roll out and are in the process of rolling out breakfast grab-and-go breakfasts in the remaining schools in the current year. And as we move forward into next year, or in the year we're now in, we are looking at improving ways to improve food quality and food health, looking at making improvements in the salad bars in the district as an area that we're particularly interested in. We're also looking at the food preparation equipment that is available in the district or not available in the district, because that's an important constraint right now to move toward more scratch cooking. Is we need to have the right equipment in the right places and the right staff, of course, to operate that equipment. So looking at food quality and how do we move more toward scratch cooking is certainly still very much something we're interested in doing. And lastly, the other item I'd point out is we also, in the course of the last year, reached a new bargaining agreement with our food service workers that allows the district to contract out food service work incrementally without laying off any existing employees, and we have done that. All of the non-union employees who work 20 hours or less per week, which there's about 100 such employees, have been transferred over to Whitson's, and they moved over to Whitson's at the start of this school year. And then as new vacancies occur, we will be filling those as well with our food service management company providing the staff for those employees. So I'm going to
breeze through the next two initiatives. So the second initiative we have is physical activity, which is led by Teresa Argandesi from the Norwalk Health Department. And what they really try to do there is focus on maximizing transitional time within a classroom to provide some opportunities for movement and extra minutes of physical activity or mindfulness in the classroom. They're piloting various tools to see which ones the kids and the teachers respond to best. One of the really great successes has been at Cranberry School, which has just last month had over 22 users of the Go Noodle Plus and clocked in 19,000 extra minutes of activity through the month. So that's one really great success story with that. And then funding for that has been provided through Campbell Healthy Communities and United Way. And then lastly is the Social and Emotional Health Work Group, which is led by Mary Kate Locke and Marissa Mangone. Instead of creating another initiative, we decided to partner with Norwalk Acts, since they already had a social and emotional group. So we just have really report-ins and provide them basically the framework for them to be able to do their work within Norwalk Public Schools. And details on a lot of their work are in your packet. It's pretty extensive, so I don't want to bore you with all extensive details on that. So then lastly is additional areas that we're looking to improve on is working with the district to improve the communication. We're developing a school liaison, so each of the schools will know exactly what the areas are within the policy that we're working on. Also supporting the the talent office's staff wellness initiative, if they so need to, within the framework of the wellness committee. Something that's really come up over the past few years is food access, so things like weekend backpacks, summer food, and things like that. And then we've had a school, Rowayton School, is interested in food waste. So we're looking to partner with them on that as well. Okay. Does anyone have any questions for us?
Sarah, please.
Sorry. Just quickly,
Yep.
in the nutrition education policy, so it's down, it's the second page after the heading nutrition education that we have
This
here.
is within the policy or within the report?
Within the policy.
Okay.
Under professional development for teachers, it talks about that training shall include instructional techniques and strategies designed to promote healthy eating behaviors, and also that staff members shouldn't advocate dieting behaviors or a specific eating regimen to students or other staff or parents. And I wondered if you could speak to, if you know if any progress has been made as far as that professional development for the staff that supervises the children when they're eating.
We haven't, this policy has only been around for about a year, not even 18 months. So updating it to include professional development really hasn't been part of the plan yet. Truthfully, if I had, as a side note, just in my opinion, if there were more teachers on the committee asking, saying we need this, or, many of us don't know if it's a need or how to address it. So I think if we had more guidance, I think that would be an area that we could look into. There have been opportunities to do professional development, and we have met with health teachers over the past few years to talk to them about redoing, looking at their curriculum to see if it's something that they wanted to redo and update, because I guess the health curriculum is a little dated. So that's one area that we've worked over the years.
Okay. Anecdotally, I would just say one thing that I hear from parents the most is how their children are spoken to about food during the course of their actual lunch by the people, the staff that are
So not necessarily, so within the lunchroom staff?
Within the lunchroom staff, yeah. So that might be an area to look into.
That would be, if it were lunchroom staff, that would actually be Whitson's employees, or a blending of the two. So that could be something actually, if it was, that's going to be something probably school to school that they probably could address within their action items from their assessment.
Yeah, the food service staff does undergo professional development, and they do undergo quite a bit of training. A lot of it is geared toward food safety, and there's a whole food safe certification and so forth. But if there's other issues that are out there that we need to address with our food service workers, either district employees or Whitson employees, then we should certainly, we have the ability to do that. So, share it with me and I will get it to the right place.
Mike?
Okay.
Mike?
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. First of all, two quick notes. I'm glad to see and hear that we are pursuing getting dishwashers into a couple buildings in the reusable dishware. That is a great step. I know across the country we're starting to see more of that to limit or to increase recycling, limit waste overall. So I'm also happy to hear that one of the schools is interested in decreasing their food waste. I know college campuses do that a lot. Sometimes there are competitions about decreasing, the food waste by doing weight competitions about how much is getting wasted. So I'm glad to see that we're at least looking into that and encouraging that. I do have one question on it, and it somewhat relates to food waste, is are we now collecting data, customer service data, customer satisfaction data, assuming the students are customers related to food, on the quality and variety of their food they're getting in all areas? So that would be the breakfast, lunch, as well as during the summer school as well, both quality and variety.
We are in the process of putting a survey together to put out to our students and staff and parents and so forth. So that is on the to-do list for this year. It hasn't gone out yet.
So the goal for this year is to get baseline data.
Yeah.
Where we could survey annually and compare, is it getting better or not?
Okay, thank you. And hopefully, as quality and variety increases, food waste would decrease as well.
Yeah, one of the challenges is we have, there are certain federal requirements in terms of, in order for a meal to be reimbursable, it has to meet certain standards, so that certain things have to be on the tray. But we are looking at ways that other districts have, helped reduce waste by giving students more choices. So instead of, an apple is the only thing, maybe there's 3 different fruits that you can choose from. And I know with the younger children, if the apples are sliced, they're more apt to take them than if it's a whole apple. And so, we need to look at sort of creative ways to both meet the federal requirements and, make the, meals as appetizing as possible. So.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. We try at every meeting to have some data report. December will be taken up with the Next Generation Accountability Plan, but tonight we would like to give the first report that you've seen on preschool readiness. And as you know, as an initiative of Norwalk Acts several years ago, the PELI, which is the preschool readiness assessment, was introduced, and we've now had a couple of years of giving this, and are able to see the improvements. We're also able to see which providers on the School Readiness Council are doing better than others, and that is helpful to the council in making decisions in terms of assigning school readiness seats. I remember vividly when I became superintendent in the summer of '15, a conversation with Anthony Allison on PELI. And at that time, we were near the universal level of preschool. Some 98% of Norwalk students attended some form of preschool. But only 40%, as measured by the PELI at that time, were ready for kindergarten. And I think that was a very big signal based upon the data that we had to do better in terms of the quality of preschool and its capacity to prepare students for kindergarten. And that has in fact been the focus of the Early Childhood Council. Since it was reconstituted and reappointed by the mayor and I 2 years ago. So this data will be extremely helpful in terms of informing their work and further steps that we would take toward school readiness. We have Paula Palermo with us tonight from Norwalk Acts, along with Ralph and Anthony Allison and several members of the Norwalk Acts board, Mr. Ritter, who are in the audience with us this evening also.
So, good evening, board. I just want to take a moment to introduce Paula because we've worked together for a number of years. And, over the past year or so, I think you've started to see the work that's been done with Norwalk Acts. And you see how they work together with us as a partner. And one of the main goals of Norwalk Acts is really to, as Dr. Adamowski mentioned, to collect and to be able to collect data and be able to give this data back so that we can actually use it to improve our student outcomes. Paula is the data director and truly a partner with our schools, and she's the data director for Norwalk Acts. One of the key values that she brings to us is the ability to be able to drive this change that we're doing right now through this data. She helps by coordinating all of this data getting into one place, as well as collecting it and developing ways of presenting it. One example you saw this earlier this year was our strategic operating plans data dashboard, which really the guru behind that and using a tool called Tableau for visualizations was Paula. Tonight you're going to see another example of that with the example that she'll give you of the PELI data. And with that, I'll kind of step back, let Paula talk a little bit about the data, and then from an instructional standpoint, you've got Dr. Myers and Mrs. Voss here to talk about program, if there's any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Ralph. Good evening, everyone. I'm here just to talk about the prenatal to third grade initiative that Norwalk Acts has undertaken. And just a review of what Norwalk Acts is that we're about 100 community organizations and individuals sitting at the table talking about ways to improve the education system here in Norwalk. We're looking at the cradle to career continuum, so we're talking about prenatal to career. And we have broken that up into 6 outcomes. What we did is we originally started working on each of the outcomes with working groups, but what became obvious pretty quickly was that when we were talking about students reading at goal level in 3rd grade, we really needed to incorporate the work that was going on in the Ready for Kindergarten sphere, because children that aren't ready for kindergarten have a pretty low probability of reading at 3rd grade level. So that we would really like to start the work, in theory, we'd like to start the work prenatally. We'd like to start with the moms, making sure that they're healthy, making sure that children have the resources they need to be ready for kindergarten when they get there. So I'm going to talk about the who. Norwalk Acts, our members, our partners. We have the prenatal to 3rd grade work groups. That includes work groups around social emotional learning, around language and literacy, around the actual pre-K to kindergarten transition. We have a prenatal to 3, and by that I mean age 3 initiative, where we're looking at home visiting, we're looking at social emotional aspects of parenting, the parents as well as the children. And we have a health and wellness work group, which Lisa is involved with, and is Teresa Ardadezi. The Early Childhood Council sits at our table. The providers sit at our tables. We work very closely with Norwalk Public Schools. Literacy How is a literacy-based organization that works with us on standards, on assessments, on understanding. They do a lot of coaching and professional development. And then we have a multitude of community-based organizations that are part of Norwalk Acts. When we talk about getting children ready for kindergarten, the hardest thing that we've had to do is to try to measure what that means. How do you measure whether your child is ready for kindergarten? And back when we started this work, one of the first things, or the only thing that we really used to measure it, was called the Kindergarten Entrance Inventory. That was done in kindergarten. It's still being done today. It's a state-mandated assessment, and basically a teacher will look at 6 domains. Problem solve, I have to try to remember all of the 6, but the literacy, language, numeracy, social, creative, and personal, and physical. So that happened after the children got to kindergarten. So it was kind of hard to look at the children after they had gotten there and say, well, they were or weren't ready. How do we help them earlier on to make sure that they are ready and more of them are ready? So one of the first things that we started working with was the PELI. And PELI is the Preschool Early Literacy Indicators, not Initiative. My mistake. And I'm going to let Janine talk a little bit about the PELI, because this is a literacy assessment.
Great. Okay, so the PELI is a tool that we can use to inform our work. It's a standardized measure, the PELI, which is very similar to DIBELS that we use in K3. For ages 3 through 5, and it has subtests that's given to students in a storybook format. And it takes about 15 minutes to administer. It's untimed, and it measures early literacy and language skills throughout the year, because there are benchmarks, 3 benchmarks throughout the year. There are 4 areas. One is alphabet knowledge, and students ID as many letters as they can in a random array. There's another subtest, that's the vocabulary and oral language subtest, which has 2 expressive language tasks. One is picture naming, and one is called Tell About. There's a picture of a scene related to the theme in a book, and what students do is they name as many pictures as they can, and then after that they will tell as much as they can about those pictures. The next subtest is the comprehension subtest, where the teacher reads a story and pauses during and after the task, during and after reading, and asks questions. And then at the end, the child participates in a shared retell. So the teacher starts to retell the story, and the student fills in the blanks. Then, last but not least, there's a phonological awareness test, and that's just a broad term that refers to the identification and manipulation of pieces of language, of oral language, such as words and syllables. And so students see a scene from the book, and they're asked to tell the part or the sound of some of these objects that they hear
How old?
first.
Did you say 3 to 5 years old?
3 to 5 years old,
So
yes.
3-year-olds are being asked some of those questions, the same
Yes,
as
they are.
5-year-olds?
Yes, they are. Yes, they are. So they're the same components, but the stories might be different. One of the stories is called On a Farm, another story is Show and Tell About School, those kinds of things. It's just an estimate of the student's overall literacy performance, and it really serves as a predictor to how students will perform in kindergarten on those kindergarten DIBELS measures. So they are aligned. And that's the Peli. Where'd you go?
I have a question about the 18 sites that are on the preschool. Are you going to get to that?
Sure. I'll answer your question.
Well, what are they? How are they picked? How many sites are not involved in this? What are the 18 sites?
So all the sites are on a slide that you will see in a few minutes.
Oh, okay.
Toward the back. However, these are all the sites that are eligible and receive school readiness grants. The school readiness grant is a grant to the parent that supplements the parent's income up to the level of tuition. And these providers are all members of the School Readiness Council, and they are subject to the rules and initiatives of the School Readiness Council to improve.
Thank you.
Okay, so just a couple of things about the Peli. It's an achievement measure. Okay, it basically takes we take a measure of the child's literacy and the foundational skills 3 times a year, beginning of year, middle of year, end of year. Okay, it's both in the threes programs and the fours programs. It is said that it's an 80% predictor of 3rd grade reading with quality instruction. And we have more than 900 students in these programs every year that are being assessed using Peli. So if you look at 900 students in the 3s and 4s programs, that's about 450 per grade level, and which represents almost 50% of our incoming kindergartners. The next area that we wanted to work on was looking more at the social emotional status of our children. There's a product called the Ages and Stages questionnaire, and it's basically a questionnaire for parents that they can start using when the child is an infant, and it's a developmental screening so that you answer the questions when your child is months old, and then you answer questions, developmentally appropriate indicators at 1 year, 2 year, all the way up to 5. Okay, this year we've used the ASQ in all of the 18 programs, so we're getting ASQ data from all of the preschools that participate in this, that also participate in the Peli. And we're now using the ASQ as part of the online registration, so that parents, when they're filling out their kindergarten registration, fill out ASQ, so that we are collecting data in 5 domains of our, certainly in our preschools and our incoming kindergartners. And those 5 domains are fine motor skills, gross motor skills, communication, problem solving, and personal and social. So we're getting a picture of more of the whole child, not just their literacy skills. And we're still doing the kindergarten entrance inventory. So with those 3 sets of measurements, we're starting to get a better picture of what it means to be ready for kindergarten. And we can address the children as individuals, knowing a little bit more about them. So just a data snapshot for the work that we've been doing for the last 3 years. I'm looking at cohort data. I'm looking at the class, this year's kindergartners, or the class of 2031. Hard to think about 2031 right now, but that's when these kindergartners are going to graduate from high school. So we've been tracking reported preschool experience over the last few years. And the data is, in the beginning, was not quite as good as we'd liked it to be. There was a lot of unknowns in here. But this year we have a pretty good, solid representation, and it looks like 88% of our incoming kindergartners have gone to a preschool, okay? 52% of them were assessed using the Peli. 40% of those students were at or above benchmark in the Peli, okay? As far as the ASQ, the first 2 years that we did the ASQ, we used a different product called the ASQ SE, so you can't really compare these numbers to that. The 68% that is represented here is about children who are above the risk cutoff in all 5 domains, okay? And the KEI, we've gone from 60.2% to 63.8%. The KEI is just being completed now, and we just don't have the data quite yet. Okay, don't get scared by this, all right? One of the ideas was to take this data, instead of just measuring Peli data and literacy data, let's see if we can map out the Peli results versus the ASQ results. So what we're looking at here, I just want to give you an idea of where the work is going. What we've got here is 5 data points for every child. There are 425 children behind these data points, and there's a dot on here for each one of the domains that they were measured in. So what we're trying to determine is whether or not we can make some correlation between low fine motor skills, or low communication skills, or low gross motor skills, and low Peli skills. So if you look up in the upper corner here, you're seeing that children that are both at high level in Peli and high level on their 5 domains. We've got a group here that are pretty high in their 5 domains, but not doing so well on the Peli. But more importantly is down here. These are the children that are below level in the 5 domains, or any of the domains, and also low in their Peli scores. So this is where we want to look. We want to look at these children. We want to try to understand how we can help more of these children come up here, okay? We've just started looking at this, so there's no real conclusions to be made about this, but we are using, so we're getting some research assistance to try to determine what the correlations are and how we can inform our work moving forward with this. I also want to talk about the Peli results. Okay, when you look at the class of 2029, which is our current 2nd graders, back when they were in their 4th program, at the end of the year, in May, they were assessed using the Peli. And 122 of them that ended up coming to Norwalk Public Schools were in the red. Okay? They were assessed at well below benchmark. What I wanted to know was, where are those children now, and how are they doing once they got into Norwalk Public Schools? So what we have is that 122, when they came to kindergarten and were assessed in dibbles at the beginning of the year, there was much more of a variation in their dibbles assessments. And over the course of their kindergarten year, the greens went up significantly and the reds went down significantly, which is exactly what we wanted. And then they came back in 1st grade, and at the beginning of the year, the greens dropped significantly. And then it took 4 more assessment periods for us to get back to 87 of those children being in the green. Okay? What happened here? Summer. Likewise, I did the same to see if there was a pattern. The class of 2030 is our current 1st graders. We had 160 of them that left their 4s program in the red. Same thing happened. Beginning of year dibbles, we had a better variation. The numbers started going up. What happened here? Summer. So there seems to be a pattern between kindergarten and 1st grade, and we'd like to try to understand how we can maybe address that and see if we can help these kids not fall backwards over summer. It's the whole definition of summer slide. Another thing that we're trying to do is look at growth. Okay, if you're looking at the Peli assessment, you're talking about a point in time at the beginning of the year, the middle of the year, and the end of the year. And what we really want to know is growth. How are the children doing? So with some manipulation of the well below benchmark, and at or above benchmark bands, I was able to graph out children who stayed in the same band from beginning of year to end of year. This many stayed in the red, this many stayed in the yellow, this many stayed in the green. Then there was another group that fell to a lower band, so they might have been in the green or in the yellow, but went down to either yellow or red. And these are the children that grew from a lower band, like red or yellow, up to yellow or green. So here we're looking at, we would like to see better numbers here, that the children that were in the red at the beginning of the year got that improved their literacy skills. But this is not indicating that certainly the children that stayed the same, they might have gone from the low end of the band to the high end of the band. So we're not that granular here, but this is just a snapshot to be able to try to understand how we're doing in helping our children grow in literacy. But again, it's not just a Pelley score. There are other factors. There are so many other factors that might be contributing to this.
That's my point. We have the Pelley scores, and that's what we're relying on. And when we get into school, a variety of other factors come into play, including different kinds of assessments. So do you feel that what goes on in the school is kind of like almost qualitatively different than what's going on in the preschools around the Pelley?
Well, they're two different assessments.
That's my point. That's my point.
I understand, but this is what we have in the preschool realm, and this is what we're using to try to understand where our children are on the literacy.
This is the closest correlation with DIBELS that we have.
Oh, that's my next question. That's as close to DIBELS as you can get as the Pelley.
That's correct.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, it was designed by the same organization that designed the DIBELS.
To your knowledge, do other districts find this happening also between the Pelley and the DIBELS?
I don't have any other points of reference to other districts that are using it.
Well, it's an interesting question.
It is.
It doesn't make sense.
Yes.
I would say in general, most school districts are not assessing kindergarten readiness. I think we've had the opportunity relative to our work with Norwalk Acts to do something here that most communities will not have data on.
Although those that I have heard that are doing it, Pelley is what they use.
Pelley's what, if they use DIBELS, it makes a lot of sense.
So
never mind. Could it be that there's some, we talk a lot about growth spurts, a variety of things that happen when people are growing at different rates. The idea of going from 3- and 4-year-olds to 5- and 6-year-olds and that kind of stuff, is there anything that might explain that? It's just something that would be beyond testing itself.
As far as, if I understand your question, you're talking about what, from here to here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so these are the same kids. Remember?
I know, that's my point.
What happened here? Well, one of the things that happened here is a lot of these children are in their preschool program from May to August, just before they start. So there's learning going on here for a lot of these children because they're in a program that runs year-round. So that's part of it. The other part of it we have to talk about is what's the difference between this assessment and that, and can we make this correlation? But the purpose here was just to track these children to the point where we can at least see how are they doing after they got out of their preschool. And I don't know what conclusions we can make about this right here, but it's worth.
I mean, this certainly makes the case for year-round preschool.
Oh yeah.
Paula, can I ask you, in the subsequent graph where you're looking at those bands, is there kind of an obvious explanation why a greater number of students decline versus improve?
I can't tell you what's going on.
I mean, it's a weird pattern. I mean, it's a pattern for
Yeah.
sure. You can see it, but weird.
Yeah. I just want to point out that the schools that are using this Pelley, the School Readiness, Head Start, Norwalk Early Childhood Center, there's some of our neediest kids.
Some
of our neediest kids, many of our neediest kids. I mean, they're free and reduced lunch, I mean, if they're being subsidized with the school readiness grants and going to Head Start programs, you know, you're talking about some of them.
What's CDC?
Childhood Development Center. It's just one of the categories of the programs that is doing the Peli that doesn't fall into the school readiness or Head Start. So the work that's going on moving forward, which I will talk about shortly, is, you know, really about recognizing the trends, recognizing the phenomenon of what's going on, and trying to figure out how to address it. One of them is going to obviously be professional development. How do we raise up the instruction level at the preschools so that less of this happens, certainly less of the regression. But this is fairly new. Doing this type of literacy assessment in pre-K is not, it's not the standard application in most districts, I think. So it's taken a while, and we've done a lot of coaching and professional development in the programs to try to raise the level of the instruction. But typically, I think the focus on literacy in pre-K is not, I don't want to say it's not normal, but it's not widespread.
The other thing that the partnership has done that's so incredible is really trying to understand for each one of our students that's coming into kindergarten, what is that potential profile that the child brings? So for 2 years, we've kind of understood the child, not only their literacy development, but also their social emotional growth, their fine motor, their gross motor, because so many of these things need to be addressed in order for literacy to blossom and for language to develop. That's why the exciting work of kind of putting the ASQ next to Peli, so we get full understanding of a student, so that when we plan the instruction, when we plan those age-appropriate early learning activities, that they are building fine motor, gross motor, communication skill, and as well as focusing on the development of language and alphabet. So this is really probably the richest display of data collected on 3- and 4-year-olds that we can then bring into a kindergarten. What we're working on right now is mapping this data by child to the kindergarten teacher so that we know as much as we can to accelerate the learning of that child the minute they enter Norwalk. It's a very sophisticated system, and probably one of the only ones I've seen that's really collecting this data and having this kind of partnership.
But just the validity of data based on a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, that's a difficult pill to swallow. That's all I'm saying. It seems we have a lot of assessment. Data is good, and it's good to have data. But if it's based on children so young, I'm just not sure about if it's. I'm not talking about maybe we can replicate it, but the validity of the data itself is just, to me, something I would question. There are so many things that that perhaps a 5- or 6-year-old or a 7-year-old, up to a point, would adapt to circumstances where a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 5-year-old would not adapt to and would have an impact, a substantial impact when the data, one way or the other, plus the nature of kindergarten versus the nature of preschool also. Much different set of circumstances. That's what I'm saying. I mean, you got the data and it's great, but
what we want is just, we'd like a better understanding.
Yeah.
We just want a better understanding. And you know, is it right to look at that particular score at that point in time in the preschooler's life and go with that as a you know, hard and fast indicator of whether or not they're ready for kindergarten? I mean, again, what goes on here, there's a developmental phase that's still happening.
That's right.
To get them ready. So some of this is organic, that they are, you know, learning, and they're 4 now. They're getting close to 5. They're getting ready for kindergarten. You know, is that just a matter of their age at the time? So, but it is exciting, as Dr. Meyer said, is to be looking into this instead of just looking at a hard and fast number, but to be able to try to understand.
Just one last thing.
Yes.
I'm not sure, I'm not familiar with preschool in Norwalk and how it works, but are there, to me, one of the keys for success in kindergarten or first grade is when the child enters, may not be so much their what you might call their literary skills, but a variety of social, emotional, interpersonal questions, things like that. A kid can test high on the Pele, but when a kindergarten teacher first has to deal with them, there's a variety of things that take place in a more formal school setting, for better or for worse, that may be qualitatively different from the conditions under which they took the Pele, and have a real hard, tough impact on the kids. Again, what I'm going back to is the assessing 3- and 4-year-olds, to me, is a crapshoot. There's so many other factors that at that age children are dealing with. And to rely on that, I mean, it's better than nothing. That's all I can say. But to rely on that I wouldn't get my hopes up too high for continued improvement.
Well, but and I agree with you. I agree with you again, but it's a starting point, and the work that's gone on over the last 2 years has allowed us, most importantly, to ask better questions of the data and try to understand the children a little bit better in a developmental sense.
Right.
Because again, if you look down here, all the oranges that are down here, that's fine motor skills. So the correlation between that, so should we be focusing on teaching our children fine motor skills before we're focusing teaching them on motor skills?
And fine motor skills is a developmental characteristic. It really can't be taught. It's developmental.
Right.
Okay, so this is the data that Dr. Adamowski was referring to before. And before I show you the names of the programs that are there, I just wanted to just point out that this data is, again, a snapshot of the programs and the end-of-year scores for the 4-5s last year. So we're looking at the different programs sorted by the size of the program. So you're talking about the largest program up here on top and the smallest program down below. And that we're looking at children that are the range of the spectrum. Special ed, free and reduced lunch. There are a lot of other factors in here that might contribute to the size of the red band. And that's all I wanted to say about that. And I'm going to let Dr. Myers talk to you.
Again,
yes.
we're always talking about growth versus achievement. So one of the things is this is a moment in time for the students that are served in that particular program. And why we've been doing the other charts on growth is to try to say, well, that's where children started. Are children making growth over time? And how do we know that if we're using the Pele? So we want to keep looking at the Pele with multiple measures, not just an achievement measure, but a growth measure. One of the things we know is part of understanding data is knowing where the children started and then where the children were actually able to grow to. So this is an achievement snapshot, and it shows a moment in time for the children served. And we're continuing to look at deeper representations that are growth-based, but also measures that put Pele against ASQ so that we start to identify those profiles of children. To get back to your point, because we need multiple measures to really understand what very young children need in good preschool programming.
I will say, if you look, obviously there's a lot of, a kid going to Carousel is not a kid who's going to be in Head Start. So some of this is, I don't want to say self-selection, but your populations are very different, which I'm sure you appreciate. I just wanted to mention that. One question is on Norwalk Early Childhood Center. Is that just the typical kids, I would assume?
No, it's everybody.
All students.
So that 64% you see in the red, that conforms pretty closely to the 60% of special needs students at NECC.
Okay, and just to I know I've used up more of the time that I was allotted, but I just want to talk about moving the story forward. The data collection and analysis that we're doing will continue. We will hope to improve the quality of the data and the action planning that happens as a result of it. Professional development and coaching, very important. So this is where we want to, like I mentioned before, raise up the instruction, the level of instruction and the quality of instruction in the programs. And then the kindergarten communication. One of the important work groups in the prenatal to third grade initiative is the pre-K to K transition. And what we're really focusing on is aligning the kindergarten teachers with pre-K teachers so that there's an agreement on what ready for kindergarten means. Because if you talk to them both
You mean
now,
vice
you're going to
versa.
get two different
You meant
things.
vice versa.
And vice
Aligning,
versa.
you mean lining the pre-K teachers with the kindergarten teachers?
Right,
Yes,
right.
okay. Thank you.
Thank you. The other thing that I just realized as I was talking about it, that I left it, or that I was thinking about it, that I left my hard copies in the car. Made these nice summaries for you. But one of the products that we've created is called the Incoming Kindergartner Summary. And so what we tried to do is create a resume for every incoming kindergartner with the data that we collect from the kindergarten registration, with the Peli data, with the input from the parents on the ASQ, so that we can start to look at a student in the whole sense. So the handout includes a demographic, so you know where the child lives, you know whether they're male, female, their date of birth, the neighborhood that they live in, ethnicity, if possible, whether they're, if it's known yet, whether they're English language learners, what their pre-last score is, which is a test that they use in the ELL to help determine where they sit on the scale of ELL designation. And with the Peli score, if they had it for the last year, so they've got the whole FORS program Peli scores on there, and then the ASQ. And the ASQ domains, whether they are above cutoff, they are in the monitoring phase, or whether they are below cutoff. So it gives you a bigger picture of the student, and what we're hoping that will be done with that is that there's a more informed assignment to kindergarten teachers. And the pre-K NLI program, I'm going to hand it over to Janine to discuss that a little bit.
So pre-K NLI stands for Pre-K Norwalk Literacy Initiative. Sounds very similar to CK3LI for good reason. The pre-K group was very impressed with some of the systems and practices that we have in place in our kindergarten through grade 3 classrooms and in all our schools. So they are mirroring some of the effective practices that we use in K-3, such as the data analysis process. So that's currently being developed.
Okay, thank you. And just to round out the visual here, one of the things we're learning from our longitudinal studies of children over their early childhood career is that adding Norwalk students ready to learn in kindergarten to reading at goal level in third grade is the work that's going on in Team Summer. So we can help to identify and possibly provide programs that would help more children, certainly in the K-1 summer, get better programming, because a lot of children probably don't, they may not have access. I don't know all of the children's summer history. We're trying to gather that using the rosters of the programs that are part of Team Summer so that we can see who's going to a summer program and whether or not that had an effect on their end of year kindergarten, beginning of year first grade scores. So the work that's going on in Team Summer will help us fill that gap a little bit better. Questions?
Well, thank you for, I'm sorry.
Okay, I don't want to spend any more time than we have to. The Dibbles benchmarking that we are using, this might seem like a naive question, but how confident are we that it's developmentally right where it should be? Where is that coming from? It's not coming from us entirely, I know. It's also coming from other places too.
So in terms of the cut scores?
Yes.
And the cut points for risk, there is validity and reliability with those measures. They've been studied and normed, so they are nationally normed. And so that's what Peli follows, and they are supposed to be predictors to how students will perform on those kindergarten measures. When you think about that letter ID assessment subtest of the Peli, it very much mirrors and matches the letter naming fluency measure on Dibbles. When you think about asking students the first parts they hear in objects, you know, they may say the first syllable, that's a precursor precursor to their phonemic awareness.
Sure.
Which
No,
is measured on DIBELS.
To clarify my question, I meant the DIBELS benchmarking, not the Pele. That the DIBELS was achievable by the middle of your bell curve broadly. Do you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do, yeah.
Okay.
There is, like I said, validity and reliability in this measure.
It's interesting, at the third grade level, it is considered much easier assessment than our state assessment. That's the one place where the overlap occurs. So you'll typically see students who have higher DIBELS scores than reading ELA scores on the SBAC.
So in third grade on DIBELS, for example, students are presented with grade level text. The benchmark for that would be to read 100 words per minute with 97% accuracy, with good comprehension. And it's not as a comprehensive of an assessment as something like NWBA or SBAC, right?
Okay.
Paula, thank you very much. Very formative report. Again, our thanks to Norwalk Acts for taking us down this path and their election of Pele data. I also wanted to report to the board tonight on the appointment of the school start time study committee. Mr. Lyons, can you pass that? Thank you. Would you pass that way? The board is aware that this is one of our priority implementation steps for this year, to study this issue and to determine how to implement it. And so, you know, I think at this juncture, we consider the start time issue settled science around it being a health risk to adolescent students. So if you will notice on the committee charge, those 7 items really relate to not whether we're going to do this, but how best to do it. We will be surveying parents and students. We will be having focus groups of staff and parents and students in each school. There will be a survey as well that will probably be modeled after the Newtown survey. And we do have, we did an RFP last year for school bus consultants, and we have one that will be working with us, trying to achieve cost neutrality in terms of the logistics of how we do this. So part of this will be an education process, and broader than the committee, because everyone on the committee, I think, is very well aware of this. We have, in fact, we have a couple of experts who do this in their, who are involved in this in their professional career. But how to do it at scale, thus far, all of the districts in Connecticut that have done this have been much smaller than us. And there is no large city yet that has accomplished this. So I'm hoping that we will find a way to be the first in that regard. Committee's organizational meeting is next Thursday. We'll be meeting 6 to 8 times, twice per month between now and March. And again, several of these meetings will be held in high schools, you know, relative to the to gathering data and information. I also want to take this opportunity to thank a number of board members who have provided moral support and fuel to the investigation of this issue and the best practice of other districts. Mr. Barbas for the information from Greenwich, Ms. Meyer Mitchell for the information from Newtown, Dr. Kimmel from New Canaan, and Ms. Keys, who attended a national conference on this topic last year. And Ms. Keys will also serve as the board liaison for this group. So we're off and running, and really looking forward to an exciting process that will lead to a better situation, healthier situation, greater welfare for our adolescent students. Finally, I want to introduce Dr. Zakiya Parrish, who is in the audience tonight. Zakiya, would you stand for a minute? You will be seeing her frequently in the district. Dr. Parrish is a high school principal in New Haven, Connecticut. She is also in the University of Connecticut Superintendent's Preparation and Certification Program, and she's doing her 120-hour internship with me in Norwalk. Dr. Parrish is a woman in science. She has a doctoral degree in chemical engineering and has worked in that field and taught at the college level prior to her enrolling in the Alternative Route to Certification program in Connecticut and becoming a STEM teacher, and now moving into administration and the principalship and hopefully a superintendency in the future. So she brings a very interesting perspective. We're going to learn as much from her as she learns from us, and we're just very pleased to have her associated with us this year. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. That's my report.
Okay, thank you. We covered a lot of ground tonight. We will now move to actions. We have a consent calendar, and this includes approval of personnel, budget transfers, and approval of trips. I will note that C4, I don't know if we should modify this consent. That trip has actually been canceled because they didn't have enough people signing up for it. The Norwalk High School trip to France and Italy was approved by us beforehand, but they've modified the dates, and I think we wanted more information from them. So I guess...
Mr. Chairman, I'm getting asked that you do approve the Brian McMahon trip.
Okay.
Just in case, they don't have enough students right now.
Okay.
But just in case they do, we will not, we've spent a lot of time on this one already, and would not want to have to bring it back again. I would say, though, that, you know, as we modify the field trip, particularly the out-of-state, out-of-country field trip policy, one issue is instructional alignment. You know, for example, like CGS, do we enable every student who reaches level 3 of a language to participate in foreign study? But in this particular case, it also illustrates the equity issue. This trip costs $3,000, and that's why there's not enough students that will be able to go. And even if they did get enough, just a very small fraction of students could afford to do that. We have to do better than that. And so we have to find a way, again, like CGS, where the schools can help subsidize the trip, where students might have a foreign travel savings account that they start when they're a freshman, that brings them up through the junior year. There are many innovative ways to do this around the country, but again, I think our goals here are the dual goals of instructional alignment on the one hand and equity on the other.
Okay. So if we can proceed, if I could have a motion. Julie, seconded. Dr. Kimmel. Any discussion? All in favor? Okay, unanimously passed. Thank you. Our next action is approval of an honorary high school diploma for a veteran, Alexander E. Springer. Mr. Springer, I don't know the whole case of this. I know he attended Nathan Hale. He had 1 year of high school. He served 2 or 3 tours in Vietnam, and he received 2 medals as well. And we are to resolve upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education approves an honorary diploma for Norwalk High School, from Norwalk High School for veteran Alexander E. Springer pursuant to section 10-221AI of the Connecticut General Statute.
I would just add that special legislation, Connecticut law, allows you to grant diplomas to members of the armed service who were serving during the time, at war, during the time they would have graduated from high school.
Okay, could I have a motion, Mr. Meek?
Yeah, I'd like to make the motion that we give an honorary high school diploma for Lance Corporal Alexander Springer.
A second?
Second.
Dr. Kemmel?
Question?
Yes, sir.
Is there, Dr. Adamowski, is there a process involved in this kind of thing, or is it just catch can? How's it work?
Go ahead. Brenda.
Appreciate the question. Mr. Springer reached out to us. He's living in Florida now, and one of his greatest joys would to be able to have a high school diploma. And so our process has a couple of components. The first is a document that he was in attendance as a Norwalk public school student. And then secondly, we require documentation of his service and his honorable discharge from the military. Upon conferring both of those documentations, we then bring forward to the board that he has met all of the requirements of the law, and you can confer a diploma.
Thank you.
Was it necessary to print parts of his middle school transcript?
Apparently so.
Probably not. I don't know. Again, this is the first time we've.
We have a documented record of his time in school, so we know the credits that he had and the time that he left the school, where he had attended, when he had left, and we actually have a wonderful records retention officer who was able to bring that document, and I have a hard copy of it for me.
Okay, all in favor? Unanimous, thank you. Mr. Springer is now a graduate of, I guess, the class of, I don't know.
So we send them a diploma to all, what happens now?
Yes, we just send him.
I asked, gave him the choice if he wanted to come with the board. He really would love to, but in Florida, it's cold here. So,
and it's getting colder.
Very cold.
He requested that we would mail his diploma to him.
Okay.
Oh, smart man.
Well, thank you. Our next is something I'm going to delegate to our new vice chair, Sarah Lemieux. So, Sarah, if you would like to proceed.
Sure. So I would like to make a motion for discussion about this item. That's okay. The wording of the item has to be corrected to approval to work with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, which is CPAC, to create a Special Education Parents Advisory Council, CPAC, in Norwalk. And the reason it's an important distinction is that the Parent Advisory Council is intended to be a parent-driven body, and we are not actually creating anything by voting on this. We are giving our blessing to the district to work with the Parents Advocacy Center in the creation of this body with parents. So I actually would like to introduce John Flanders, if I might, to talk for a minute about the work that CPAC wants to do with Norwalk as a district, if that's okay.
Thank you. And just to start, if you need somebody to deliver that diploma down to him and would like to provide me with certain funds, I'd be happy to step away from our weather for a few days. My name is John Flanders, and I am the Executive Director of the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center, which is the Parent Training and Information Center for the state of Connecticut. We are mandated under IDEA to provide education, engagement, and empowerment for families who have children with in special education or who have been identified with disabilities. As part of our job, we have found that the special education process works best when all of the stakeholders, the parents and the schools, are operating from as similar a playing field as possible, to have as much information as possible about each other. So we proposed a program to the State Department of Education to establish some pilot special education parent advisory councils in a number of locations in the state. The parent advisory councils are modeled on similar programs that are being offered and are in fact mandatory in a number of states around the country. Massachusetts has a requirement that each district has them. Virginia, New Jersey has just adopted one. What the idea is for a collection of stakeholders, largely driven by the parents of children in special education, have the opportunity to come together and create information that can be shared with the policyholders in the community. So what you are doing in this case is telling the people who will be doing the work, the parents who will be coming together and meeting, and the stakeholders and the community members, that you will present them with an opportunity to speak to you about the state of special education within your community. We hope and expect that not only will this allow for some clearing of the air for people to express their opinions, but also with some really good ideas for how to make improvements and how to better interact with educators and parents to make this a more effective process. It is largely modeled on the State Advisory Committee on Special Education, which is another mandated board which advises the State Board of Education and the legislature every year on issues as presented by stakeholders in the group. In our pilot program, we asked to have 3 communities, and we tried to make them as geographically and demographically diverse as possible, and I think we've done a fine job. The other 2 communities, which have both been approved, and the last one was approved just last week, are the town of Canterbury out near the Rhode Island line, which has about 1,200 people in it. The town of Rocky Hill in the middle of the state, which is about 15 or 16,000. And we reached out to Norwalk as an urban community because we want to get, as a pilot program, we want to have as much diversity of information to bring back to the state to move on with this process. So we've had very good cooperation with the special ed department here. We have the enthusiastic support of and I'm going to mess up the name of the parent group, SPED Partners here in Connecticut, as a way to move this into a cooperative and collaborative communication situation. You will have parent consultants from CPAC, from our CPAC. Sorry, we're going to give you more initials to remember, who will work with this. It is largely a self-driven organization. We are going to let the members of this establish their structure within very reasonable parameters. We will show them how it's being done in Massachusetts. We'll talk about how it's being done in Virginia and other states. But this is a group that will form itself, lead itself, and then at the end of a year, come back to this board and give you a report on their view of the status of special education and recommendations for doing a better job. Hopefully it will continue on indefinitely, and we will use the information that we gain from working with you guys to help establish it in other communities around the state. And it's late, so I'm going to be uncharacteristically brief and answer any questions that you might have.
Any questions from the board? No? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
We thank you for the opportunity. We're really looking forward to working with your schools and with your parents.
Thanks. Thanks again.
I would also like to add that the SPED ad hoc committee enthusiastically recommended to the full board that we go forward with this.
Okay. Okay, so we don't have to have a vote on this, right?
We do. We have to just vote that we approve the idea that they will work together and like a...
But before we vote, a question?
Yes, sir.
What would be the impact on the ad hoc committee?
None.
None at all?
None.
Okay.
I mean, there would be communication between this body and the ad hoc committee as requested and needed, but it wouldn't, one wouldn't do anything to the other.
So I guess, Sarah, you made the motion, right?
I motion for discussion.
Oh, okay, so would you like to make a motion?
I would.
Okay.
Motion to approve working with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center to create a special education parent advisory council in Norwalk.
Okay, would someone like to second that? Dr. Kimmel. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor? Okay, it's unanimous. Thank you.
Thank you.
Now we will move on to something a little more technical and not very interesting. I'll explain it for a second. I don't think we need to bother Tom with this, but if you recall, we have a long-term lease for where all the school buses are kept, and this allowed us to lower our cost of transportation. It turns out that that property, unbeknownst to us, Eversource, the old Connecticut Light and Power, has an easement across that property for a high voltage transmission line. And that line is about to get replaced. They need to move a bunch of our buses, can't stay there during this period of construction. And if any of you ever drive down Wilson Avenue, you'll see across the street from the bus depot, there is now a big fenced-in area, and there are police cars there all the time protecting our buses. So what we are going to vote on now is basically to give our consent to this deal, to give the superintendent the authorization to execute various agreements with them. So the language reads as follows, so I will treat this as a motion. Resolved upon the recommendation of the superintendent of schools, the Board of Education authorizes the superintendent, Dr. Stephen Adamowski, to execute such agreements by and between the City of Norwalk, the Norwalk Board of Education, First Student, and Connecticut Light and Power Company, also known as Eversource Energy, necessary to set forth the terms and conditions upon which Connecticut Light and Power, Eversource Energy, may enter 332-334 Wilson Avenue in Norwalk, Connecticut, where its easement exists to perform a maintenance project that includes replacement of underground cable facilities. Could I have a second? Mr. Meek, any discussion? All in favor? Unanimous. Thank you very much.
Just want to thank Tom Hamilton and the members of the City Law Department for their work on sorting out this very complex issue that threatened to derail our entire transportation system.
Now, Ms. Keys is not here tonight. This is our last action. This is approval of the GPA policy.
Frank, could you come up for this one, please?
We've had a great deal of discussion about this. As you know, there have been workshops at each high school. The policy committee has met, I think, 3 times on this, if I'm not mistaken. And this has now been sent to the board for approval. Frank, the floor is yours.
This would be your first reading.
Yeah,
approval would be in December if you know, in whatever form it's adopted.
Great, thank you. Good evening, everybody. So as Mike mentioned, this has been a long process since last June or so, when you, as a board, approved a unique situation last year at Norwalk High School with a culminating graduation that included a valedictorian, salutatorian, a NECA student, and a Norwalk High School student. This was not anticipated at the time that NECA came to be. But we believe that through the good efforts of Heidi Keys, Dan Sullivan, and Dawn Leeds, we have assembled a task force of teachers, counselors, parents, and students from both high schools with representation including NECA, Norwalk High School, CGS, and Brian McMahon High School that have looked at the various issues that have been presented by parents and staff and students. And we think we have a reasonable, compromised policy that meets the needs of most of the population at both schools. So a quick summary of events. The committee began this work in September with sessions being held at both schools. We did a couple of day-long sessions with the committees. The committees then held 2 cafe-style focus groups, one at Norwalk High School, one at Brian McMahon High School. We publicized this well through the communications office and had a significant turnout at both high schools. God bless you. Particularly at Norwalk High School, where we had in excess of 100 parents, students, and staff members who came to see a draft policy that had been constructed and proposed by the task force on that evening. Brian McMahon's turnout was a bit lower, as this wasn't a tense or you know, challenging issue for them in the same way it was Norwalk High School last year. The committee chairs, Dan and Dawn, completed a draft policy, and we presented this policy with the input, adding the input of the 2 cafes into that draft policy on the 13th of November. So what you have in front of you is the revised policy. that policy initially had a 9-credit recommendation ceiling, and that was incorporated initially because there was a concern that NECA students who were taking numerous courses at the local community college would have an advantage because half-year courses had counted as a full credit, and they could earn in advance of 9 credits in a school year, which traditional Norwalk High School parents found to be inequitable and unfair in GPA attainment. Second piece there is speaks to that first point really, which is that the credit allocation for dual enrollment classes for Norwalk High School students who become NECA students, take classes at the community college, earn a 0.5 credit for semester classes, no longer earning a full credit for semester classes. And that was a result of looking at basically analyzing the number of hours that a student sits for a semester college course, comparing that against what a high school student earns a credit worth over a 180-day school year. And the differences in the hours were significant. And so we thought that it was important to adjust the credit acquisition for NECA students who were in semester courses down from 1 to a half credit. The rest of the recommendations here you will see are consistent with the original proposal that the task force completed. We will have a VAL and a SAL and a NECA scholar. They'll remain in place for the current senior class and the current junior class upon graduating in 2020. And starting with the class of 2021, so our current freshmen and sophomores, these would be the new phased-in policies. First, going to a Latin honor system in place of the traditional class rank and Val and Sal designation. You're probably familiar with this. There's a 3-tier breakdown based upon GPA ranges. More students would fall into the category of a cum laude, magna cum laude, or summa cum laude graduate. The valedictorian, the former valedictorian, who has been the class speaker in years past, that practice would change, whereby each high school would have a panel to be determined at the school, and that panel would interview finalists for distinguished speaker at each graduation ceremony. We have not gotten specific about what the requirements need to be for that distinguished speaker. We've intentionally left that broad, but we are incorporating language that this needs to be somebody who is academically accomplished, but also meets the other criteria of a well-rounded student. And at the conclusion of the third marking period, the senior academic record will be finalized in terms of consideration for distinguished speaker and Latin honors respectively. And that's done so just because of time constraints and the need to get this process going as you enter into the last phase of the school year. Subcommittee recommendations are as follows. Over the summer, both high schools would revise their school profiles. That's basically like a 1 to 2 page document that goes to each college and university and highlights the high school program of studies, courses that are offered, demographics of the school, etc. So this would be revised to accommodate and recognize the policy changes. Secondly, there would be a program of studies. It's named here as a guide that we would review that and take a look at course descriptions and make adjustments accordingly based upon this policy. An incorporation of statements related to wellness, which was a key component of this policy development, that we are thinking about the wellness of all students as they go through their 4-year course sequence. And then lastly, thinking about new ways to recognize student accomplishment in the program of studies. Unfortunately, Dan Sullivan could not be here tonight to present. He's teaching his course at Fairfield University, but kudos to both him and Dawn Leeds for putting in a tremendous amount of time and effort and energy at a difficult time in the counselor's life, fall, when they are writing, numerous recommendations every week. But the work here has been well worth it. It's been vetted by the school communities, and I think it's ready for your review and then hopefully adoption. One other note in the policy, you'll find there that the credit requirements have been adjusted to reflect the new state requirements. So we're going from 20 obviously to 26, including the 1 credit capstone. There's also a statement or two about the district's desire to credit middle school 8th graders who are taking Algebra 1 or a world language course, who can demonstrate a mastery in that course and earn 1 high school credit while in 8th grade. That also supports the district as we move to the 26 credit program of study.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. So
Thank
I think
you.
this is just our first read, and we will approve this policy at our December meeting. I don't know if there's any discussion.
Just a point.
Dr. Kimmel.
Of course. Thank you. Two things, this being on the agenda with the later start thing, I think is indicative of the district going in the right direction. For me, what happened last spring was a glitch caused by an oversight, but there was a real silver lining, and this is it, because once we are into the Latin system, I think we're going to really reduce stress among high school students. And that's the bigger issue looming over this entire episode. We've used this episode to really take a large step in the right direction. Coupled to this is the movement to appoint a task force for the later start times, which will tackle another problem that afflicts the health of high school students, chronic fatigue. So I think it'll be possibly in a few years a much easier and pleasurable experience to go to high school in Norwalk.
Thank you.
Question, Mike?
Yes.
Are colleges moving away from asking for class rank?
They
sure as heck wanted it when my kids were graduating.
They are increasingly moving away from it. Both Dan and Dawn reached out to several of the universities about some of the brainstorming that was going into the planning to be sure that this wouldn't work against us. Mm-hmm. One of the features of the policy will be that, given the nature of our computers and our PowerSchool capabilities, we can still provide a student's rank if a college were to request it. This would not it would not be a public document or a widely shared bit of information.
Okay.
But we believe...
I wouldn't want to be in a situation where, a college demanded it and said, well, we don't have it, and well, you can't apply it.
Scholarship.
We're prepared.
Yeah.
We're prepared for that.
Okay. The Latin system and the decile system, which was not recommended here, are really becoming the two most popular. And one of the reasons for that is that the GPA calculations are so close. When we looked at this last year, dealing with the issue of the 3 students and the NECA student, their GPAs, all of them, were within tenths of a percentage point. And if you drill down further, you found that probably the top 10, 20 students in the class had a GPA differentiated by 1/10 of a point or less. It was amazing. So, I think this represents some very good thinking on the part of everyone who was responsible for working on it.
Okay.
Great.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. That concludes actions. And now, information reports. Mr. Hamilton, monthly financial report, please.
Okay, I will be brief. There's really nothing of any great import to report to you tonight. We're 33% of the way through the fiscal year, 20% of the way through the school year, and we've spent approximately 25% of the budget, so we are pretty much exactly where we would expect to be. In monitoring the salary accounts, those are tracking where we would expect them to be. So that's certainly, important. Fringe benefits, we've now expended 33% of the fringe benefit line, but that's really just a charge that comes directly from the city. Controller's office has a contribution to the fund where the benefit costs are paid out of, or where the premiums are paid out of. So really nothing unusual there. On special ed in the 330 account, as well as the 562 and 563 accounts, we've spent approximately 15% of the budget in both of those accounts at this point, and we do have a good handle on what those expenses are likely to run through the end of the year. So we're on budget for special ed. Really, I think those are the highlights. I don't know if there's any questions, but we're right about where we would expect to be at this point during the year.
Thanks, Tom. Any questions? No. Thank you, Tom. We will now move to committee and representative reports. Let's start with Ms. Corbett.
Sure. So committee, we have a number, since Ms. Keys isn't here, I'll just give a quick recap on policy. We have a number of pieces that are coming up. In the next month, we hope to cover food policy, and then in combination with the curriculum and instruction committee, we will also discuss the field trips policies moving forward. And then the next big piece on policies plate is to get back into the 50 or so policies from the CABE report that need to be, some of them minor adjustments, some of them bigger adjustments, most of them are minor adjustments. Do you want me to do a combination of the two, or should we do back and forth?
We're going to do back and forth.
Okay.
Is there time for a question for policy?
Sure.
I would ask if you, as you're going through this field trip thing, I know you saw the packet tonight, like dates are missing, there's scribbles here and there. Could we digitize this somehow?
There is lots of room for improvement, and that will be something, yes, that I hope that we will discuss. I would agree with that.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Ms. Lemieux.
So, the SPED ad hoc committee did not meet because we had a snow attack, but on behalf of the committee, thank you all very much for approving the work that the district is going to do with the CPAC to create the CPAC. It's very confusing to have two acronyms that sound the same when you say them out loud, but actually stand for different things. But yes, the committee and the parents in particular were very enthusiastic about that, and I think it will be a really great thing. So,
and did you want to address at all the there was this big complaint filed with the state? Are we going to get an update on that at some point?
I don't have any information that I can share publicly about it at the moment.
Okay.
But I know the board will be getting an update about it.
We're having an executive session on December 4th.
Okay.
With our council present, which is what she has requested, to brief you on that.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Lyons.
We're still in that lovely period of time with no contracts that need to be negotiated, and just one grievance that's scheduled for a hearing on the 27th.
Okay. I will talk about two things. So one, as chair of the facilities committee, we have been pretty busy. On this coming Monday, we'll have our regular November meeting, but we'll have it at PONUS. And what's more important, that evening we are going to have a big public presentation to the PONUS community, the West Norwalk neighborhood. That we have gotten approval from the final approval from the state for this project. We have gone out, or we're about to go out to bid, and we expect to break ground some early in the first part of the first quarter of next year. So that project is really moving along, and we want the community, all stakeholders, to know about it. So we will be having a meeting at PONUS at 6:30 on Monday night. There will be childcare, although you do have to sign up for it in advance. And we are hoping to have a website that it will be, it'll be like ponusridgeproject.com, but you can click that and it will take you to the specific page on the NPS website where all that information is, so someone can go directly and see all the drawings, all the elevations, see the floor plans, and really appreciate what the project's going to look like. But we're going to be going through that. We've had a big reach out to different groups of stakeholders about this for next Monday. So that will be a big day for us. In addition, we are going to have, and this is all for Norwalk Public Schools, on December 4th, I believe, for realtors. We're going to have another public session. We did this last year. We did it in this room on a morning, and it was very well attended. We're going to do this in an afternoon, 3 o'clock at Brian McMahon High School at CGS, so people can see, realtors can see our facilities. And we've also had a big reach out to different, realtors, not just in Norwalk, but in our surrounding towns as well. The Columbus at Ely project is moving, it's been in the works for a while. We have some ground we had a big meeting with the mayor last week about it, and we're making progress, but we're not as far along as Ponus. In addition, we have hired architects to do kind of conceptual drawings for the Jefferson renovation, as well as the renovation of what we are calling International Baccalaureate, or IB, at Chestnut, which is the old Columbus building, and ongoing work at Norwalk High School. And we will, because of all the standing water that's been at Cranberry, we are going to do some air testing of that building just to make sure that there are no issues there. We're not aware of any issues, but we want to play it safe, so we'll be doing that. So that's everything to do with facilities. As chair of the board, I also sit on the mayor's task force. It was originally actually proposed by the superintendent, but the mayor's task force on education funding. We had our first meeting last week. We will have our next meeting on December 4th and subsequently on December 18th. It's a really kind of interesting group of people, including the former superintendent from Stanford who lives in Norwalk, is a Norwalk resident, a member of the Common Council who chairs the Finance Committee, who used to be on the Board of Estimate, a current member of the Board of Estimate. It's a really diverse group that I think hopefully will make some good progress, but that group is unlikely to be able to provide much help for the coming budget for 1920, which we've gone publicly out with, and we really are hoping to have a discussion with the city in the very near term as to what's this going to look like. But the superintendent has been meeting with the mayor regularly, and I think we've got a good dialogue started. We need to go the next step in that dialogue.
Mike, isn't there a meeting next Tuesday?
I don't think so. I thought there was, but it's December 4th. I don't think there is because Tom wasn't going to be here, and so they postponed it.
Kirsten will be there with Barron.
Oh, is that it? Okay, I looked at my calendar announcements and it wasn't there, and that's why I was thinking.
Okay, maybe they can. I think it was supposed to be. Whatever.
Okay. Well, I think Bruce is right. Okay, then they didn't. I don't know. We'll figure it out. But anyway, there were going to be a bunch of meetings. Okay, Brian, the floor is yours.
Thanks. So, as Finance Committee Chair, while we're on this topic, I did reach out to the Chair of the Finance Committee from the Common Council to suggest that we take a similar tack to past years where we would meet as a joint both finance committees, just to share budget goals. That was received, nothing confirmed yet. I think we're probably giving time to this funding committee to kind of get out of the gate and figure out its mission and charge. But I'm still open to having that with them and just kind of waiting to hear. I did have an idea that could happen on our December 13th meeting coming up, but I don't know at this time. I would express interest in, if it doesn't happen that night, to still have it at some point before we get to actually approving these budgets or requesting our budget approval from this side. But that remains fluid. Anyway, going back to, we did meet on November 8th, and you already approved the transfers and the Eversource right-of-way tonight. One thing I do bring up is we did get a sneak peek at some exciting software coming from First Student that will allow us to track real-time bus routes, get a phone app, and you can set up personal alerts as to when your bus is coming, or if it's not coming, or just check it out where it is. So, you know, it's in the early stages, but we're gonna have a tentative rollout in December. And
December 3rd.
And I think we're all looking forward to that. It's stepping into the 21st century, and you all know, as having young kids, when that bus doesn't show up, there's probably not a more anxious moment in your day. So hopefully it's forecast and they have real data that like this will reduce calls and administrative tasks that will lend those people to have more time to do things like optimize bus routes. So anyway, looking forward to that. We got a little bit of a brief. I mean, there's nothing set in stone yet, but in terms of like the two variables that would have, you know, driven our budget beyond an untenable approach, enrollment and healthcare costs, early forecast is that those don't look like they will put us over the limits of what we were already asking for. So they're, you know, within some norms there. So not risk there other than just the big ask itself. And that's all I have. Thanks.
Regarding the task force, Mr. Burnett, who's the chair of the council's finance committee, he was at the meeting that Mike and I attended, and he is well aware that the task force will be looking at longer term issues, not this budget cycle. It's just too close, not enough time. Some good ideas were brought up at the task force, and we'll see how it goes going forward. I think there will be, at the very least, we'll figure out ways to generate savings. If we can generate additional revenue sources, that would be the ultimate goal, and we will be looking into that. The Curriculum and Instruction Committee met right at 5:30 this evening, and we spent, it was an interesting meeting dealing almost entirely with data. We had a report on the data from our expanded summer programs. Looks like we stabilized what we call the summer slide. For those folks who are in summer school. So that's a big step forward. This is, I think, the first year where we have comprehensive data where we really can look at it. Going forward, we'll do this yearly, and we'll have a good understanding of what we can do and what we can't do. Also, a proposal was presented for next summer to expand it to 6th grade and to have a little bit of a different configuration, putting the 5th and 6th graders together, K-4 sites and 5th and 6th grade sites, to better transition 5th graders in the 6th grade. So it looks like we're making progress in dealing with, like I said, what's called the summer slide. I just love that one, okay? And we also had a report on the various assessment that our ELS students took in the 17-18 academic year. This, for the first time, will be a part of our state accountability report. So this has become increasingly important. The good news is we're a little bit ahead of the state averages, and Stanford and Norwalk are leading among the cities that have roughly similar percentage of ELS students. Stanford and Norwalk are doing the best. So we're okay, our ELS students. There's room for improvement, but we look forward to continue to do better. December, the CNI committee will talk about the character program at Tracy. We will not go through the entire program. We're primarily interested in what's considered principle number 6, which is how this impacts the curriculum. That's the primary concern, whether it's embedded into the curriculum, whether it's added to the curriculum, whether it's a combination of both. So we really want to look into that. In January, we will have a joint meeting, as indicated before, on trip policy. Our policies regarding trips. We're primarily interested in adjusting the process so that trips go through the Curriculum Instruction Committee, where they should have been, in my opinion, in the first place. Also, in January, we will look at, did I say December? I meant January for the trip business. Also in January, at our regular meeting, we will deal with the high school program of study to ensure that our 8th graders know exactly what they're getting into when they move into a 25, basically a 26 credit high school curriculum, to make that transition smooth. So things are going pretty well in the CNI committee. Thank you.
Okay, Bruce. If we can do board member announcements, start with you, Bruce, and work our way back, I guess. If there's anything left to say?
Forgot all about that. Well, I hope everyone has a happy Thanksgiving. We have, as I speak, company is on its way, and I have to get back home and get back to work. That's all I can say. But a happy Thanksgiving to everybody.
Thank you, Bruce.
Yeah, I would say the same. Happy Thanksgiving to you all, and wow, I'm looking forward to maybe a warm football game instead of a sub-zero.
Frigid.
So I'll be looking forward to that announcement.
Tomorrow morning. Okay, Mr. Lyons?
Nothing to report. Looking
Okay.
forward to Thanksgiving.
Mr. Mew?
I am also looking forward to Thanksgiving. I wish everybody a happy Thanksgiving. I am very happy to report that I will be playing the piano at All School Meeting at Columbus tomorrow to support the first grade in their share, and then I'm going to cook for the rest of the day.
Okay. Ms. Corbett?
Sure, thanks. So first I want to acknowledge and thank the Curriculum and Instruction Committee for tolerating and smiling at our very adorable non-voting member this evening that joined us, also known as my 2-year-old Sebastian. So thank you for the books. I wanted to give a quick update on, since it's not really a committee, I thought it would be better suited in member updates, just a quick update on some of the improvement steps that as a board we decided to move forward on, since we haven't really talked about some of those pieces publicly since we first decided on them over the last couple months. So I'll just quickly run through a couple updates. First of all, there will be we tried to do a 1-pager. I think it became a 3-pager that Brenda Wilcox-Williams is finalizing right now, that several of the board members have worked on, that is designed to be a communication protocol as well as kind of a reminder of the chain of command for when complaints or issues arise, as well as some information about public comments, when committee meetings happen, and this was really designed to try to inform parents, community members, even students on what the proper process is to resolve issues within the school district. And so we hope that streamlines some communication for families and communities, as well as board members for when issues come to us. So that should be released in the very near future. In addition, we discussed having the secretary position act as a corresponding secretary as well, and so making sure that any issues that come into the all board email are responded to, and this would go along with the chain of command in that they're basically deferred to the appropriate staff member with the districts and central office. The executive committee has agreed as a board, as well as Superintendent Adamowski has agreed to have some regular meetings to discuss the agendas coming forward each month. And then another piece moving forward is that the central office will develop some type of training program, training materials for incoming board members. And so this has been deferred at the moment since we have no new incoming board members right now, but this is something that would be considered for the fall of 2019 when we have potentially several new board members coming on board. So I just wanted to quickly recap some of those pieces since we're making some progress on those improvements that the board has agreed to moving forward. And with that, I have to go home and pack because I'm driving tomorrow morning to Vermont.
Okay. Before we scoot, we do need to approve the minutes for October 16th, 2018. We have a motion to approve by Dr. Kimmel, a second from Ms. Lemieux. Any discussions, corrections?
Just one thing on page 2. Right in the middle of the page, there's a line that says, Dr. Adamowski stated that the, and it just stops.
That could be true.
It's probably accurate. So let's make sure we correct that because we know how well spoken our superintendent is.
It was a very important thought.
And I think that's it. Could we have a motion for?
Well, you got it. Don't you have a
Oh, we have to. We didn't vote on the minutes. Sorry. All in favor as corrected?
Okay.
That's unanimous. And then could I have a motion for?
Move to adjourn.
Adjourn. Thank you, Mr. Lyons. Second, Ms. Corbett. All ready to adjourn? Aye. It's done. this huge stack.
Thank you.
We made a lot of progress.
So who makes that call on the game? Is it
This?
Kenny or is it?
No, it's, we're
just that
gonna
one.
consult in the morning.
Yeah.
We've had conversations.
They knew he wasn't coming.
Oh, the school does it?
We do that. We have to do
I don't, he told them he'd never be.
over their objections.
Brian, I think I've read it was the coldest Thanksgiving.
I know.
Well, what's
I don't ever,
Potentially.
I remember some cold days.
So we won't have the band.
Yeah.
And then to go up and see if my daughter
We're
decided
gonna
to
try
go
to
to work.
blow hot air dimensions. But, you know, for anybody who watches
Right
the
now,
game, it's basically
James is flying over Russia.
Nice. Oh, I like, God, he's flying from Dubai?
He started in Afghanistan this morning. He's been in Kabul for several years.
I mean, if you have that Saturday morning,
Dubai, and then went across